Greetings! Welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of Golarion today? I hope you are, because it is the world of the Pathfinder role-playing game system, and we're going to be diving into TNZ, the continent once more, and visiting the nation of Wanshou. I am your host and guide here, Tantus Naravan Dracovin. I can open up a gateway through time, space, the universe to take us from our world to Golarion, where we can learn all about Wanshou, look at it first, and be right there on the ground. But if you are ready for it, I can lead you through the danger. Please do leave me a little bit of tip here, like grabbing the bell of the things, and let me know what you think about Wanshou in the comments below, or if you've used it in any of your adventures. Alright, I've opened the gate. It's time to go. Take my hand. Going through. We arrive at TNZ once more. Wanshou. Whew, what a place to learn about. It's not the safest place to be, but as long as we don't get on the nerves of the Kraken in charge, we'll be fine. But there are some places that you can look deeper into Wanshou and learn about. Sources that I've used and ones you might want to use them yourself if you want to dive a little bit deeper in, and these are 2 books. Yeah, I know the background's different. I actually did it for a couple videos this week, so don't worry about it. Anyway, the Dragon Empire's Gazetteer and TNZ World Guide. The Gazetteer is, of course, for 1st edition, and there's a bunch of updates from there to the TNZ World Guide, so I would really recommend that one best, but both of them do paint a pretty good picture. Let's start with the basics of what Wanshou is. It is technically a successor state of Longhua, meaning that it was part of Longhua. The fall of Longhua really didn't lead to its downfall. I think that's the important part about it. Other factors led to what nations become now. During the time of Longhua, it was the rice producer. It was the breadbasket of a lot of the empire. But a series of disasters that happened have led this place to kind of be driven to a wasteland, and it's ruled by monster. Kraken. I'm going to probably butcher this. Zonagor. Probably got it close enough. It's the Zhanagorr. It's a Kraken's name. It's supposed to be a little bit weird. Anyway, Zonagor now rules this nation and took it over peacefully. We'll talk about it, but it is a mess there. And of course, he rules from Nubijan, which was the old capital during the time of Longhua before, but now it's a half-submerged city ruled over by this creature. You can find Athamarus, Boggards, Celcilians, Flesh Warps, humans, Merfolk, Tripkeys, and Undead, all in this nation. And other than speaking Tianian, Classic is a pretty big language there. And yeah, it still has some pretty big productions there. But you also have to consider that being a nation of, evil creatures, there are evil deities that are also worshipped there. So this is another thing to support in mind. Lady Nambinyo, the Widow of Suffering, Mamashtu, Grandma Nightmare, Lo Shu Po, the old rat woman. Hei Fang, the Duke of Thunder, is also worshipped there. And Hei Fang gets that because it's domain over storm, sea, winds, rain. So, though Hei Fang not necessarily being a more traditionally evil deity, there's good reason to be there, effectively. Let's dive into this nation and what happened to it, what drove it to what it became. So, it is on the western edge of the Zidao, the ocean that is there. And it's a vast stretch of mire and flood plains. A crushing tempest ruined the land basically over a century ago. And its lush and vibrant surface hides a lot of the permanent damage from that time. This massive cataclysmic storm. If you explore this place, there's still dangers across it. Predatory hunters stalk the expanses of tall grass and the orchards. Lily fields choke the space between waterlogged trees and roots that go through the mire. This kind of balance of land and water that seems to be there. It's kind of sometimes impossible to tell where you're going to end in grass, and then oftentimes a deep pocket of flood. And there are traders and locals alike that share stories of just disappearing into the wetlands. You're going along, all of a sudden, boom, water, wetlands, into water, gone. This version of the land is something that is newer. As I said, it's only been here for about a century. At a time, a lot of the food supply from throughout TNZ came from this land. Plentiful farmlands, rich and productive paddies. It was the breadbasket of Long Wall. It kept that war machine going. And it was fed by the backbreaking sacrifice of the farmers of Wanshou. Yeah, you know, Long Wall wasn't a great place. They kept dominance over this region, so they sent a lot of officers loyal to Long Wall across the province. And though tensions grew, these loyalists kept things going and kept the food coming to help Long Wall's expansion. Demand on the farmers continued to increase though. When the fall struck Long Wall, well, the community Wanshou descended into chaos. The empire's in ruin, the heavily armed military outposts abandoned, and these long-abused farmers rose up against their oppressors. There are few traces of old Long Wall after the violence and upheaval, or actually that rebellion in Wanshou today. All of that is gone. Because during a year of catastrophic flooding that altered the shape of the land in a period known as the Season of Torrent, it swept away everything in its path and cast the survivors into poverty. Homeless, battered by the war that happened after the chaos and the freedom, starving from salvation, they need a savior. Being of ancient, unfathomable power and sin. Yup. Thunderbolt. Basically, the people of today have adapted to living in a world dominated by water. Their spirit, tenacity, ingenuity in this nation. And they're guided by a generation of elders that want to bury the past of their servitude and suffering under Long Wall. The elder Kraken manipulates Wanshou now through fear, paranoia, and a glorious future for these people that were battered down by the waves. Thanks, Zanganor. Thank you, our great savior. This is how the nation looks. You can see all the nice rivers going through it and why it's a very flooded place now. To traverse this nation, even as it's rebuilt, you witness the progress of Zanganor's goal. He wants to conquer the land and sea. Where an expanding flow of water buries both the natural and artificial elements of Wanshou's history. The population consists of farming communities isolated between miles of untamed marshlands. These are set on terraced farmland, taking advantage of natural waterways that provide a lot of defensive site for every town and village within the nation. Along these terraces, grains, wheat, rice being two big ones, grow with minimal maintenance in narrow plots of lands, supplying the community with plenty of space for harvests while providing a protective barrier against the swamps that encroach upon them. Most communities have been settled over only 3 generations. Remember, when the catastrophic flooding happens, everyone and everything was kind of destroyed. So yeah, it makes sense that a lot of these places over the last 100 years are only like 3 generations old. They're very new. The distance between communities can vary greatly. There's a network of dry, elevated paths that require maintenance from the elements that go between those. Locals, traders, and socials frequent these roadways. And an adventurous individual has gone into the wilderness with other methods, but again, there's creatures out there, there's dangers out there. It's a gamble. Travel across Wanshou's delta is slow. There are wet and dry seasons, and the water level rises and falls depending on how close it is to the coast. So, if you're not on a dry path, small skiffs are ideal for moving along the floodplain. But then we get into the other problem. Vegetation. It's a twisted, terrible swamp. Some vegetation can make things difficult to travel. Then you have uneven ground, and low-hanging branches or twisting trees, tall grass, carpets of lilies. It can make maneuver difficult. So it's like you have to rely on these paths that are maintained by the government, or if you try to get on a skiff, you have to then still maneuver through a really horrible place. So if you set up by foot, It can be waist-deep water at any time. And yeah, and there are portions where the floodplain have eroded the channels to make deep channels. And you might not know the difference between a just submerged path and a deep channel, and all of a sudden, whoosh, you're down deep. And you better hope there's not something there that was waiting for you to fall in. Even on this, there are elements of the past. Things that submerged for centuries just below the surface. There are structures that are intact. Weights and fortifications of these buildings that have sunk them into the earth. Things that are submerged in the mud, but preserved. They might seem wrecked at first, but no, these are lost structures that were out in the wilderness because the entire country basically flooded. And some of them have their inhabitants trapped within. I mentioned the undead, ancient undead. So yeah, collapsed towers, ruined foundations. They could be marked crossroads, markers that aid hunters. And of course those that might not the ancient treasures, which are in these ruined places. Any who make their intention to pillage the past, though, will find locals unwilling to help them. Because, yeah, these wild creatures are a reminder of the failure that happened to them. And what the water took, the divine savior might keep. Their Kraken overlord, as it's known, the divine savior. Zongnor takes and gives what they wish. Also, messing with the undead's never. Just saying, probably won't. Now, I remember the locations to talk about, and of course we can start off with the capital. I will mention a few other cities and a few other locations that are important in the nation here, but the capital of Numijan is the top one. Basically, Zongnor received the acknowledgement as divine savior of Wanshou. Cool, great. With great strength and magic, restored the city. Now there's 3 districts in this modern version of Numijan. Basically, all the districts used to be above water. Now there's this kind of mixture of land and sea. So, yeah. There are some details that are very important to say about this before we kind of get into the 3 districts. If you look at the city of distance, it looks open, it looks poorly defended. There are docks, shipping lanes, fortified flood barriers that protect Numijan from coastal storms from 100 years ago don't exist. You still have those docks and shipping lanes, you just don't have the flood barriers. It's open to Zvow's waters. This is supposed to be a reminder of the sea's blessing, and basically the divine savior's strength. Hey, I keep the flood waters back, so if there's any storms, you guys are safe. Trust me. I'm in charge. I'm your divine savior. The Dishang district is where Wanshou's original populace lives. Merchants, traders, families of laborers. These are tall buildings with hanging plant life that are representative of the mountain ecosystem. There's consideration to the shared population with aquatic denizens. I remember I mentioned some of those at the beginning. So most businesses feature sub-basements that are partially flooded and take advantage of a secondary sewer system that filters clean water throughout each establishment. So there's the main sewer and a secondary sewer that basically aquatic or semi-aquatic creatures can travel through. Falling into the coastline of the sea is the Isato district, which is a transition district between the citizens above and citizens below. Aquatic and semi-aquatic ancestries mingle with trade and subtle inconveniences for others by doing business in buildings that have been partially consumed by the coast. And then finally, fully beneath the waves, is the Karagatan district, which is built up on ruins of the city that are salvaged from the original destruction and just below the water. This is where the merfolk, the Cilians, the Athamarus make the bulk of their population here. It isn't uncommon also to find awakened undersea creatures mingling as messengers or guards in this region. So it's a very interesting city with these 3 districts. 3 other cities that we know about from the Gazetteer are Orika. If I butcher any of these names, I'm sorry. Which is a small city of mostly boggards and kappas, interestingly enough. Minisite, which is a large city, and Paizo, another small city. So we know those names, we know their general locations, but we don't know a lot about them. Other major locations, of course, are Well, the Tidecaller Temple, Chotilama's Boudoir, and the Natsubori Caverns. Why are all these important? Well, the Tidecaller's Temple is important to note, because it's in the Hisao district, the transition district of Numijan. Why are we talking about it? Because there's a growing movement of people that call themselves Tidecallers, who actually worship the Kraken, Zanganor, as a divine savior and god. As much as he is a divine savior in a lot of people's eyes, they still think of him as a powerful creature, sent by the gods. These are people that worship him as a god. It's taken a little too far, They have unity, they have zealotry, and it's a little too far. They squabble finances and resources, focus. Instead of doing that, they promote goals for the Kraken as a greater god, almost. These are the result of all the manipulation propaganda, and this might be a glimpse of the future. These people that worship the Kraken more as a god than anything else. So, Chothula's Boudoir. When we talk about Chothula, Choithila, sorry I'm butchering this one, who was a witch that bargained with locals for some supplies, exchanged for gifts. It would ask for incongruous things as form of payments, and leave her patrons unaware that the pacts they were forming, harvesting souls from the innocents to fuel her dark magic. She used curses to siphon life from the land, and menace anyone that steal away from her sinister experiments. So, pretty evil witch, but, more of a traditional evil witch. So there's a network of caves at the bottom of the flooded gorge, now fed by water by channels left behind by the storm, and people say that her body's been disturbed, and her spirit now plagues the land as strange abominations ripped from the imagination of a twisted soul have begun to boil out from this boudoir, if you call it, from these caverns that are now flooded. So, there are those who feel abandoned by the divine savior, have searched for outside help to get rid of these monstrosities, but village elders and loyalists to the divine savior heavily petition Nujiman for aid, unaware that the expansion of Zagor's influence and spread into the wetlands actually favor these creations of these creatures that have been freed by the waters. So it's sort of like, sure, they could get some help from the government and from the Kraken to get rid of these things. But them coming in here is probably just going to help them spread these creatures from this caverns. Then the Matsubori Caverns are important to talk about because wealth is important in Wanshou. And a major goal of Zangor was to get wealth to the people. And mining was a great way of doing it. Basically, they dug along the coast until they found a single mine. The Matsubori Caverns is such a mine. It is a sapphire mine that they discovered. So they're being expanded, and mining continues to get these riches out. So, yeah, they found a way to add wealth to Wanshou. Thumbs up! Probably wasn't really great people that were doing there. I'm just saying. Just saying. Here's our Elder Kraken friend. Isn't he wonderful? He rules the nation. So, the hero of Wanshou, appearing in the darkest hour, Zanganor actually caused its near destruction. Basically, only a few that are alive are aware that the season of Torrent, as it was summoned at Zanganor. He arrived at the apex of disaster to save the battered people of Wanshou. And being centuries from this intervention, the control and influence has become huge. The fact is, there was a major storm happening. This major storm disturbed Zanganor, and he used his powerful magic to intensify. So it turned from a bad storm to an apocalyptic situation. Yes, the initial storm wasn't his fault, but he used it to conquer a nation using his powerful magics. And so few know that. Zanganor has minimal effort to hide his true form, and most of Wanshou's population see the leader not as a terrifying monstrosity, but a divine savior. An entity that's less mortal and more akin to something with godlike power. Outsiders see the citizens as naive, but it's complex. The Kraken manipulates everything, has agents to it. he organized suitable locations for villages, roadways, shipping lanes, mining operations, military expansion, and more. Organizing all of it and being behind all of it means he has his tentacles in everything. Repair efforts against the nation done by the Mire Guard, these warriors, these people that do the repair work under him, are done through his guidance. Framing this intentions of the Kraken for the land is altruistic. And the prosperity of the Kraken's rule, they have no reason to look elsewhere. But knowing that political alliances of any kind could unravel his seat of power, basically Zonganor has created a precarious situation for itself in the long run. The Kraken heavily plays favorites with the ruling class of Numijan. The citizens vie for the attention of their savior, ruling lords within Numijan for triumvirate that reports directly to Zonganor. These three lords are the only ones blessed with the authority to speak directly to the Kraken, and in turn, they're tasked with enacting its will throughout the land. It's a highly coveted position, and a lot of lords and houses have occupied it over the years. Few pass the title willingly, and those who perish while holding the title rarely die of natural causes. So, yeah, if you die of natural causes, normally you're passing it. Most of the time, you pass it when you're getting too old to do it to your family. Unless you're murdered and someone takes it from you. So the high society, both above and below the tides, is focused on power. It's common knowledge that if you can bring valuable artifacts, information, or wealth to Wanshou in the name of the Divine Savior, you're granted a blessing. The Kraken is well known for granting small fortunes to those who earn its favor, and political rivals stop at nothing to prove their devotion and loyalty to the nation while downplaying efforts of their colleagues and subordinates. So, yes, he plays everybody against each other, curries favor, and doing this, it's a delicate tightrope for it, but it does make sure there is no organized effort that can turn against it. Bon Chin-He serves as the High Captain of the Mire Guard. This man in his early 40s has a reputation for being an advocate of the people. Unimpressed with the growing corruption and favoritism throughout Numijan, Chin-He has taken upon himself to make Wanshou's communities and their roads safe and provided for. Corrupted villagers have met their ends at the tip of his spear, and he is unaware that evidence he receives of their wrongdoing is often delivered by agents of the Divine Savior. So, yes, if evidence comes to him, and there's a corruption, he gets rid of it. And maybe that corruption is going a little too far for Zonganor. Just spread the information there. Get rid of this guy. He's corrupt. Yu of the Shimmering Estate is the elder of the once great merchant house. He was cunning, patient, and distrustful of the Kraken's machinations. Surviving a failed assassination attempt, Yu has basically fixated on revenge against the nobles of Numijan, relocating their family and trusted retainers through gathering custom-built trade ships that now organize and distribute overseas spices from a network of gilded barges that act as the floating house of their family. The open disapproval of Wanshou's leadership is tolerated, barely, because the trade connections that Yu have provide blossoming growth to the city and the nation. So it's sort of like, yes, they're hostile to the government and who's in charge, both Kraken and the nobles, to a degree. But as long as you bring in, it's a fine line that Yu and her family is walking. Mimi Quang, Lady of Deshang, is the ruler of the Deshang district. With a combination of luck, bribery, and gathering exploitive secrets, the Quang family has basically remained in the Divine favor for 2 generations. It's rare for a noble house to rule that long without being undermined. So, Mimi will do anything to keep this position. Tanaka is the overseer of the Hisalam district. While all the other nobles of Nujiman struggle for power, Tanaka has basically a single goal: complete devotion to the Divine Savior. He worships the... Single-minded worship has made many of the city uneasy, and Tanaka and his loyalists consider themselves above the subtle politics that govern the city since the rebirth. So we have someone in charge that worships the Kraken. And Haidapala, current keeper of Kagratan, a merfolk, has proven herself to be a shrewd politician. She's instrumental in helping restore Wanshou's population to the local oceanic community, reputation to the local oceanic community. Because again, you think Krakens aren't always the best reputation, so Kraken ruling this place, yeah. So she's kind of like being a broker between the two. Hey, this Kraken here, not terrible like a lot of its brethren. You're okay. We've got good reputation here, building trade opportunities, gathering a lot of retainers. Kagratan suggests Halpa's longevity as a result of being personally chosen by the Divine Savior. These rumors are fueled and funded by Halpa's wealth, taken from rival merchant vessels unlucky enough to encounter pirates on the open sea. Oh, you encountered pirates? I'm sorry. Alright. Let's talk about life in Wanshou. A day, a year. If you live in Wanshou, there's a balance with the surroundings. From affluent nobles to humble crafters, there's some spiritual and emotional things that have to be done. Basically, keep the nation as great as it is. These rites are observed on a daily basis to protect Wanshou citizens from the supernatural wrath of their forgotten ancestors. Yeah, the undead. It's a problem. We'll talk about it right now. But yes, there's a lot of daily routine that goes to it. Early in the morning, you draw some water and have a small meal. Barring a handful of exceptions, towns and villages are built on the terraced land, which gives at a distance a regal set appearance to these villages. Natural wells at the height of the community feed water down at each home through deep winding canals. The village spend mornings drawing the water for daily tasks and take great care not to soil or contaminate this water source. This immediate source of fresh water is a sacred gift from the Divine Savior. And it takes the form of a, winding, curling tendrils rising from the depths of a gesture of embrace onto everybody. This water can be used for cooking, washing, or cleaning objects. But you don't want to dirty the stream or supply of water to yourself or one's neighbor, because you could catch the eye of the spirits protectively watching over the homes. Farming is slow. Field work takes the collective effort of a few families, working in tandem. At midday, these families gathered for a shared meal before returning to duties. Homes of these farming communities tend to be larger, having several generations of families under one roof, a point of pride. They consider themselves self-sufficient, even though reality is far from the truth. Suitable farmland is short supply. Hunters and fishers provide a lot of meat that they would have that way to have grazing livestock. You don't have room for that. So if you're not responsible for hunting, those who aren't responsible for hunting assist with the harvest of grain, which continues to be the largest export, even to today. So this constant need to forage during harvest has created a unique food culture. Available ingredients determine meals. In most dishes, feature some peppers or root vegetables. Local citrus adds a little bit of flavor, and it further builds culinary variety. If you travel and have the same dish in every community across the province, you'll never have the same taste twice. Urban life is kind of similar to steeped in hunting and gathering, though at a very different nature. Food and water are easy to secure for anyone, even with a small amount of coin. There's not a lot of wildlife to fear, but gossip and rumors spread throughout the city, like wildfire each morning, as merchants, nobles, guards, and servants work to protect themselves from the greatest predator, rivals. In the heart of Numichan, wiser would be to fear what's within the walls than without it. The same tradition of honoring the deceased in rural communities exists in urban places on a grander scale. Residents who lack a communal stream offer blessings to the sea at least once a day, though there isn't a measure of forgiveness given in, provided the individual took care to make small offerings throughout the day. Business will set aside tips that are passed along to cover maintenance of local cemeteries. Fishers release some of their catch to appease grandparents who might pass along trade. Each small gesture holds meaning, and urban locals deeply believe that their ancestors will understand as long as their offerings are gifted from the heart. Crops are a priority for Wanshou. So keeping the pathways between communities clear of obstruction and danger is very important. Farmers rotate their crops over the course of the year. The Mire Guard makes their way across the province during this time. They rebuild, repair, and maintain roadways. And most communities are visited at least twice a year by the Mire Guard. The arrival of helpful outsiders is a time for celebration. There's not a really name for such an occasion, but communities will throw a feast, bolster morale of the soldiers and laborers who work tirelessly to keep Wanshou's roads clear and clear of danger. So these celebrations are not recognized by other communities usually. They're festivals that surround a more local event. And these are kind of the way things do. If they have festivals, it's celebrations, local stuff. So like if you can have a community hall you build, there's an important hunt, there's a time of hardship you've overcome, you have a festival for it. There are rare occasions where festivals will focus on accomplishment of a local hero. They'll focus on his noble soul, how to bolster the endurance of the community. An occasion for impromptu feats throughout settlements near the Nambori Caverns is during periods of heavy flooding. Amphibious miners, normally accustomed to exploring underwater cave networks, will celebrate the arrival of the storm, not wanting to risk getting pummeled by newly formed rapid coursing through the mines. Within homes reinforced against heavy squalls, friends and family swap stories of delight for entertainment for each other through the terrible weather. Storms can rage for several days, quickly turning a fun gathering into a marathon of entertainment. The Feast of the Forgotten, or Unlucky Feast, runs for 7 days at the start of the 7th month of the lunar calendar. It was originally celebrated as a time to honor the sacrifice of the heroes during the Lungwall Rebellion, but it's kind of been manipulated by Zong in order to be a holiday that's shifted, preserving the memory of all that wouldn't leave to see Wanshou's prosperous future. Basically, what's best to come. Music and dance are presented throughout the Unlucky Feast, and what truly defines this celebration are the meals. All across Wanshou, families make visits to other villages, cooking meals for relative strangers in a gesture of goodwill. Citizens set aside traditional dishes for more experimental flavors. In Nujima, mass buffets are set across the city, where dishes can be placed and sampled at any time. Open grills, iron hot plates are laid out for anyone to cook with. Small competitions arise among some families and businesses, but rarely the rivalries are very serious. Ancestor offerings and prayers are plentiful during this period. Mid-autumn marks the last shared holiday of the year and the closure of another successful harvest. Garden communities typically honor this occasion with a period of rest lasting 2 or 3 days, while merchants and traders halt non-essential business to allow brief respite before new work begins. These celebrations help to enrich the lives of those who live through the difficult conditions. Most, if not all, who live outside Nujiman basically have a disappearance of someone in their family, or no. There's heavy storms that threaten crops, put stressful on the maintenance crew, and the deadly wildlife that threatens to come closer to settlements. So, few citizens will endure a year without some form of loss. And those who avoid it are likely the political elite who live in paranoia and fear and betrayal of those around them. Talk a little bit more about the culture of this place. To finish up today. Locals say no matter how short one stay in Wanshou, one is bound to see the dead. Spirits watch at a distance, barely visible, through fog. Passing travelers make camp in as passing travelers make camp with you. Zombies and ghouls crawl themselves out of the muck that suffocated their lungs during the season of torrent, punishing grave robbers that would steal from their sunken homes. Remnants made of stitched shadows scream in agony across the floodplains, eternally struggling to comprehend the past and present. The citizens familiar with and reverence of the spirits is shared by a few other cultures. Above and beyond honoring the memories of ancestors, they pay regular tribute to the spirits known as the drowned. It encompasses all spirits and undead, but it's specifically supposed to be towards the people that died during the season of torrent, but it is technically all spirits and undead. These spirits, tortured eternally and bound to the land, require offerings to save them at peace. So you make weekly offerings of rice, meat, alcohol, using clean canals of clean water that flow from home to home. During the holidays and festivals, these offerings are increased, allowing spirits to partake in the festivities in equal measure. Each family building upon the contribution of the family before them to create a communal offering. The maintenance of the clean water is very important. As the fate of the drowned, ancestors are kept close to their heart. But it doesn't mean that these gestures of respect appease all spirits. There are those that have hate for the living. Vanishings happen across Wanshou. It's the nature of the land. Children are kept from running water and taught as a young age to respect the channels that run through their houses. Those who soil the streams and disrespect offerings go missing. Equally quick to disappear are anybody who vocally opposed the leadership. Political critics have been found dead in their houses, their bodies twisted in fear and anguish. Others drowned or later discovered swaying from branches and wraith-haunted awakening trees that were roaming the swamps. These murders have led to believe the spirits themselves have allied with Zanganor's will, leading to further credence of the Kraken's position as a savior. You know, they're assassinated. Powerful matches do that all. Anyway, competition to win the Kraken's favor is fierce on every social level and fed throughout it. Jealousy, desire to get that favor as a political culture of subterfuge. Fear of being spied upon by their social and economic rivals. Their fears, whether warranted or not, this paranoia has created a boom of supernatural root in local legends for historical events. Mirrors are barred from being placed in most rooms out of fear the reflection would kill and replace them too close to it. Your mirror will kill you, the reflection will kill you included. Brainstorms are reviled and revered equally. No meeting is held on the 4th of any month, and the 4th month of the year is considered to be a time of peace in politics, and it is very likely that plans will backfire during the 4th month. Nobles commonly fear gifts, for powerful curses have been delivered. So now there's a unique profession called gift receiver. That's kind of like a poison taster, but it's a person that bars against spiritual, social and spiritual barrier, that risks their lives for their host that would, open it up and, oh, there's a curse upon me instead of them. So instead of a poison taster, it's a curse taster, basically. Anyway, yeah. The ill intent runs so deep in the upper class of Nujimon that there are bloodlines that have been poisoned by this foul animosity. Physical ailments, the usual nature of it, are common, and this has children born with abnormalities, extra eyes, extra sharp teeth, tendril-like suckers on their forearms, mutations that are more subtle, those that can only see at night, can't breathe unless submerged in water, having an appetite for raw flesh. Flesh warped. Flesh warped as a, ancestor. These musicians have been pretty alarming in other cultures, but here, they're blessings of the divine savior. Yeah, he's blessing you. Blessing with these mutations, which feeds on the endless cycle of jealousy, betrayal, and malice, as they're getting more and more warped to match their warped selves. There's Wanshou. Fascinating nation. A place that's, honestly, for having a Kraken in charge of it, not too bad. Not a terrible place to live. Sure, not a great place. And yes, it was technically destroyed by the Kraken. Not that anyone really knows that anymore. Making a bad situation worse. Millennia storm into something that is catastrophic to the nation. But they have rebuilt, and it's not a necessarily terrible place to live now, unless you're noble and then trying to compete with each other. It's an interesting juxtaposition where, yes, they're being indoctrinated, basically mentally brainwashed to worshipping this divine savior, this powerful Kraken that is in charge of them now, as this conquest of land and sea is occurring. Wanshou and, of course, Zaganor's desires are not necessarily known at this point in time. Its want of conquest, spreading territory, does perhaps exist. But rebuilding this nation to be a great place under its control, under its worship, is perhaps the greater threat that's here now. How will things evolve for Wanshou? Will they oust their Kraken overlord? Will this just be the evolution of a new, darker society in the far end? Who knows? But nonetheless, Wanshou, he's here to stay for now, and evolving in an interesting direction in TNZ. And I hope you enjoyed joining me and learning about it today. That'll be it. Please go check out the rest of my stuff, whether it's over on Twitch or YouTube. Twitch is a place where I record a lot of tabletop stuff. I have my Fall of Avanswell, my live play of Pathfinder 2nd Edition on Wednesdays at 8, discussing tabletop. My podcast talk show kind of thing on Saturdays at 6, where I talk about news of the week and deep discussion topic. And I do tabletop recordings, gaming, and stuff like that. I'll go check it out. Anything like tabletop stuff, it gets uploaded on YouTube. So if you missed that live, you can always check it out on YouTube, and I do recommend things like Fallout and sort of stuff to check those out. If you want to see when everything's being uploaded, my schedules for going live, all those kind of stuff, check out my social media. Discord, Blue Sky, X, Twitter. All those kind of things. Anyway, thank you once again. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do the things on the YouTube. And, of course, until the next time, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.